I can absolutely help write this style of script. One note, the title makes a factual claim about a prophet knowing someone's future. To avoid presenting supernatural claims as facts, it's better to frame it as a dramatic spiritual story or fictional inspirational narration. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the person who secretly carries your picture everywhere finally placed it into the hands of someone they believed could see beyond the ordinary? What if that single moment changed everything they thought they knew about love, about destiny, and even about themselves? Tonight's story begins with a photograph. Not an ordinary photograph. A picture they had looked at hundreds of times before. A picture that made them smile on lonely nights. A picture that reminded them of every conversation, every memory, every unanswered question. But on this particular day, something was different. They couldn't ignore the feeling growing inside them any longer. So they made a decision. They traveled farther than they ever had before, carrying only one hope in their heart, the hope that someone wiser, someone deeply spiritual, might help them understand why meeting you had completely changed their life. What happened next left them speechless. And before this story ends, you'll understand why they walked away believing nothing in life happens by accident. Stay with me, because the most unbelievable part hasn't happened yet. The journey began early in the morning. The sky was gray. The roads were quiet. Every mile felt heavier than the last. They held your picture carefully, almost afraid to let it slip from their hands. Not because it was expensive. Not because it was rare. But because, somehow, it had become the most valuable thing they owned. Have you ever cared about someone so deeply that even looking at their picture made your heart race? That's exactly how they felt. For weeks they had been wrestling with questions. Why did meeting you feel so different? Why couldn't they forget you? Why did every attempt to move on somehow lead them back to thoughts of you? No matter how busy life became. No matter how hard they tried. Your face remained in their heart. Eventually they reached someone many people respected for spiritual wisdom. This wasn't about predicting lottery numbers or promising magical answers. It was about seeking prayer, discernment, and wisdom. The room was quiet. For a long moment, nothing was said. Then your special person slowly placed your picture on the table. Their hands were shaking. Not because they were afraid of bad news. Because they were afraid of hearing the truth. The wise elder looked at the picture without speaking. Seconds passed. Then another minute. The silence became almost unbearable. Your special person wondered. Why aren't they saying anything? Then the elder finally lifted their eyes. The first words were unexpected. Before we speak about this picture, tell me why this person means so much to you. That question caught them completely off guard. Because suddenly they realized. They didn't have a simple answer. How do you explain something your heart understands but your mind cannot? How do you describe a connection that words seem too small to hold? Their voice trembled. I don't know why. I just know that ever since they came into my life, nothing has been the same. Again. Silence. The elder nodded slowly. Not with fear. Not with excitement. But with deep understanding. Then came another surprising statement. Many people spend their entire lives searching for purpose. But every once in a while, someone enters your life who causes you to search for something even greater. Your special person felt chills. Because those words described exactly what had been happening. Yet the conversation was only beginning. The elder gently rested one hand on the photograph, closed their eyes, offered a quiet prayer. And when they opened them again, everything changed. What they said next would stay with your special person forever. But before we reveal those unforgettable words, there's something important you need to understand. Sometimes God works through seasons of waiting. Throughout Scripture we see ordinary people facing long periods of uncertainty before incredible moments of purpose. Abraham waited. Joseph endured years of hardship. David was anointed long before he became king. Even Ruth couldn't see how her painful journey would lead to extraordinary blessings. Waiting never meant God was absent. It often meant he was preparing something greater. Your special person suddenly remembered those stories. Maybe their waiting wasn't meaningless. Maybe every delay, every unanswered prayer, every unexpected turn, had been shaping both of your lives. The elder finally spoke again. This picture reminds me less of where someone has been, and more of where God may still be leading them. Those words filled the room with hope. But there was one final sentence. One sentence so unexpected, so deeply personal, that your special person felt tears forming before it was even finished. And that sentence changed the way they looked at your picture forever. To be continued in. They couldn't speak. The room remained completely still as your picture rested on the table. The elder looked at it one more time before quietly saying, "Sometimes people ask God for a miracle, never realizing that the miracle first arrives in the form of another person." Those words landed deep in your special person's heart. For months, they had been searching for answers outside themselves. They thought they needed certainty about the future. Instead, they were being reminded that faith has never been about seeing every step ahead. It's about trusting God with the next one. They lowered their head. Every memory of you began rushing back. The first conversation. The unexpected smile. The little moments that didn't seem important at the time but now felt impossible to forget. Have you ever looked back and realized that the smallest moments often become the biggest turning points? That's exactly what was happening. But then the elder asked another question. A question that completely changed the direction of the conversation. Have you been trying to let this person go? Your special person froze. They hadn't told anyone that. Not their family. Not their closest friends. No one knew how many nights they had convinced themselves it was time to move on. How many mornings they promised they would stop thinking about you. How many times they deleted a message, only to write it again. They slowly nodded. Yes. The elder smiled gently. Sometimes letting go isn't what God is asking. Sometimes He's asking you to grow while you wait. Those words echoed through the room. Because waiting isn't punishment. Throughout the Bible, waiting often became the place where faith grew the strongest. Think about Joseph. He couldn't understand why years of suffering came before years of blessing. Yet Genesis reminds us that God never abandoned him. Or think about David. Long before he wore a crown, he spent lonely years learning to trust the Lord. The delay wasn't empty. It was preparation. Could it be that some seasons in our own lives work the same way? Could unanswered questions be inviting us to deeper faith instead of deeper fear? Your special person couldn't stop thinking about that. For the first time in a long while, they weren't focused on controlling the outcome. They were simply listening. Then the elder leaned forward. Tell me something honestly. When you pray, whose happiness do you ask God for first? Your special person hesitated. Finally they whispered. Theirs. The elder's eyes softened. That's a beautiful beginning. Real love doesn't begin with possession. It begins with wanting God's best for someone, even when the future is still unfolding. Those words brought unexpected peace. Not because every question had been answered, but because their perspective had changed. They realized they had spent so much time asking, will everything work out? They had forgotten to ask, how can I become the person God is shaping me to be? And that question changed everything. Yet the most surprising moment was still ahead. The elder reached for an old Bible lying on the table. Slowly, they opened it. Not randomly. With careful intention, their finger rested on a familiar verse from Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. They read the verse aloud. Then closed the Bible. Remember this, they said. God's plans are never built on fear. Fear rushes. Faith remains steady. Those words settled deeply into your special person's heart. Suddenly they understood why they had come. It wasn't to receive a dramatic prediction. It was to be reminded that hope rooted in God is stronger than anxiety rooted in uncertainty. But just as they thought the conversation had ended, the elder looked back at your picture one final time. Their expression changed. Not with fear. Not with alarm. But with quiet amazement. They took a slow breath. Then said, there is one more thing I believe you need to hear. Your special person's heartbeat quickened. They had no idea that the next few words would stay with them for the rest of their life. And what those words revealed would become the reason they never looked at your picture the same way again. To be continued. In the silence returned. Your special person searched the elder's face, trying to read what they were about to say. Every passing second felt longer than the last. Finally, the elder spoke. Don't build your life around predictions. Build it around God's promises. Your special person blinked in surprise. That wasn't the dramatic answer they expected. But somehow, it carried even greater weight. The elder continued. People often come here hoping I'll tell them exactly what tomorrow holds. But only God sees the end from the beginning. What I can tell you is this. When someone inspires you to love more deeply, forgive more freely, and trust God more completely, don't ignore what God may be doing in your heart. Those words settled over the room like a gentle light. For the first time in months, your special person stopped chasing certainty and started seeking wisdom. They looked down at your picture again. It hadn't changed. But the way they saw it had. They no longer saw only a face they missed. They saw a reminder of the person they were becoming through this journey. Then the elder asked quietly, "Has this person made you more bitter, or more compassionate?" Your special person answered without hesitation. More compassionate. More fearful, or more prayerful? More prayerful. More selfish, or more willing to serve others? They smiled softly. More willing to serve. The elder nodded. Then whatever happens next, don't lose those gifts. Sometimes the greatest blessing isn't simply meeting someone. It's who God shapes you into because of that relationship. Those words echoed in their heart. Scripture teaches this same truth again and again. In Romans 8 verse 28, we're reminded that, in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. That doesn't mean every season feels easy. It means that even uncertainty can become part of a greater purpose. Your special person realized they had been measuring life by answers. God was measuring it by growth. But then something unexpected happened. The elder carefully handed the picture back. Before letting go, they paused for a moment and said, "Don't let this photograph become an idol. Let it become a reminder to pray." Those simple words changed everything. From that day forward, every time your special person looked at your picture, they whispered a quiet prayer. Not a desperate plea. Not a demand. Just a simple prayer. "Lord, guide us according to your will. Shape us into the people you created us to be." Peace slowly began replacing anxiety. Hope replaced fear. Faith replaced the need to control every outcome. Yet there was still one final question burning inside them. As they stood to leave, they turned back. "Will I ever know why our paths crossed?" The elder smiled. "Perhaps one day. Or perhaps the greater miracle is learning to trust God even before every answer arrives." Those words stayed with them long after they walked out into the sunlight. The road home looked exactly the same. But they were no longer the same person who had arrived that morning. Because sometimes, the greatest revelation isn't about discovering the future. It's about discovering that God has been faithfully walking beside you all along. Still, there was one last unexpected event waiting for your special person, something that would happen after they returned home, something so ordinary that most people would overlook it. Yet it would become the moment that convinced them this journey had changed their heart forever. And that's where our story reaches its final chapter. To be continued in